Guys, so within the course of the week, a lot of activities happen, and as usual, the Sunday sermon with Dele Farotimi, he actually gave his thoughts and ideas about these whole issues. Now, he spoke a lot. He talked about how they have plans of releasing releasing Verydarkman, and other controversial issues on today's sermon with Dele Farotimi. We all know that the arrest of the very dark man is actually going to cause a lot of stir in this country if the right things are not done properly. Although for some people it's actually a good measure, while for some people, to a lot of Nigerians, it is not a good measure. Anyway, I won't say too much. I'll give you guys a space to listen to the man himself and every single word of wisdom coming out of his mouth. Enjoy this one. Please don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment below, guys.
Neither are fighting my battle. I am more interested in the damage that they are doing to what is left of the Nigerian state. In that same week, the ICPC told all of us that some people helped themselves and diverted 71.2 billion of the much touted fund that was intended for students. And who are these students? The most vulnerable, those whose parents cannot even afford the fees in Nigerian universities, who would have to take on loans. But some people believed it was better to use that money to fund their own lifestyles. 71.2 billion out of 100 billion. That's in the week that was. Oh yeah, in the week that was, Rivers women, in spite of the fact that they obviously know that they did not bring Similari Fubara to power, they did pretty much like the men. They wailed impotently, walked out on Madam Ibas. Okay, can walk out all you want, but the reality is she's the wife of your sole administrator, the current first lady of your state. And my Ogasim and the wicked ones, they are already talking to the Capo, the Tuti, the Capi, and they'll resolve their problems. So don't worry, they'll soon bring back the simple one, who is the tool of the wicked one, who is the pawn of the Capo. You understand? Don't worry. If you don't get it, forget about it. Oh, yes, in the week that was, I saw Nan's presidents, whose beer longer than my own. And one of them said, our first son, you understand? The Gomina of Lagos in waiting, the Alasha Ekeji Orisha, executive vice president, apparently in charge of Natogri, we go call her in an election, I don't even know. But somewhere, somehow, the Peking of our president became interested in what was happening in Nance, just like apparently your guy Atiku was. So in short, they'll tell you the stories themselves because it's none of my business. What makes it our business, really, is the window, like I have always told you, that is opened. In my time in the university, the sons of the presidents were unknown. As bad as Abacha was, his children would not even presume to step into the space reserved for NANS. Even though we knew government was interested in NANS, it wasn't politicians of different persuasions and factions sponsoring their own factions of NANS like it has become today. But we need to look at these windows as they are opened to us so that you see the extent of the putrefaction and you might perhaps be better able to understand why the ones that we have in the universities today are almost completely dead to the reality of their environment or their own place in bringing about the change that must be obvious to them are required before Nigeria can progress. So in the week that was, we realized, if we haven't known before, that there is an unholy alliance between the student union movement in Nigeria and the political class. In fact, in that same week, some clowns, presuming to speak on behalf of Afenifere, were busy offering excuses for our first son. I assure you, that wasn't Afenifere. It's the political jobbers and renegades that are gathered in Akure. They are dancing skelewu for their master in the rock. So when you hear this nonsense being spouted in relation to Afenifere, telling people that Tinubu has performed wonderfully, understand it for what it is. Those are his paid agents. They'll say anything he once said. Those of you who are familiar with the Afenifere of Chief Obafemi Awolowo, the one headed by Chief Abraham Adesanya, Chief Ajasin, my late leader, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, you will know that we will never be party to perfidy. No, not us. Always on the side of truth. We know nothing about what transpired between Nans and Sheyi. It's none of our business. To the extent that anyone is issuing any statement in regard thereto, they're just dancing skelewu for their breakfast. You can ignore it. It is what it is. It's the way they are, and it is what they do. But that has nothing to do with Afenifere. In the week that was, I'm told that the cat known as Verydarkman, I don't know him personally. I only ever see his works. And all I see is another Nigerian who has spoken as a victim of Nigeria and has spoken up for victims of Nigeria. People have different interpretation as to his motivation or who he is. It's none of my business. The important thing for me is that if the evil that has been done against him is legitimized by either our silence or by us explaining it on account of the fact that we don't like the person or we take exception to the way they do their things, we become complicit in the evil system because then we normalize it. If you find tolerance for the evil that has been done, I don't know who are involved. The story is that he went to a bank and he was abducted within that bank with the connivance of the bank. I don't know which one is true. But one thing is, if we have to start guessing why a citizen has been deprived of his liberties, then we obviously aren't in a democracy and we are certainly not in a place that is ruled by law. I condemn in its entirety and I demand, like everyone else who still says of a brain, that he should be released forthwith and the public be told exactly what his sins are that has earned him this. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. Some people have been saying this is a distraction. You can only be distracted when you don't have a purpose. We can demand that a person who is being unjustly restrained or incarcerated be released without losing sight of the ultimate purpose of finding liberty for the victims of Nigeria. So I join myself to the call and the demand that Verydarkman be released forthwith. Thank you very much. So, good morning, everybody. It's a brand new week, and it's 10 o'clock now. And I have assigned myself this morning a particular subject. I said Nigeria, how to kill a state. Why would I be talking about how to kill a state? You know, I look at the objective realities of the Nigerian, and I came to the inescapable conclusion drawn from the evidences of my own senses. My eyes, what I'm seeing, my capacity to think, what I can see in my mind's eye. I'm a rational mind. I'm trained as a lawyer. The summation of the evidence that I see in front of me, the facts, undisputed evidence, glaring, uncontroverted evidence of my eyes, I see that Nigeria will die if it keeps going on its current trajectories. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized that long before I was born, way after I had been born, all through my lifetime, There have been persons who have spoken consistently to the unsustainable pathway that Nigeria has elected to walk, and they've all been ignored. But I am a student of history and I seek to learn the lessons of history. And looking through history, I became convinced, and I am now convinced beyond reasonable doubt, that some people did set out to kill the Nigerian state as illusory as it already was. They still wanted it dead so that something different would replace the illusion that we have all lived with. I have spent way too much time speaking to the foundational issues for me to start going over everything today. So I would advise that those of you whose quest is knowledge should take out the time. I have made the book, The Imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution, free to all. You can download it free on my website, delefarotimi.com. It's at no cost. Download it so that you would have understanding. But I must also say something because somebody pointed out something to me earlier, late last week. He asked how I am able to retain my sanity doing what I am doing. I did respond in my usual manner by saying that I never laid any claim to sanity and that it's next to impossible to remain sane in the kind of environment in which we're all forced to exist. But the bit I didn't say to him is that I actually feel an urgent need to record for posterity these thoughts so that history will record that somebody spoke to the insanity that we are normalizing, not just from me feeling the need to testify against this generation, but because I realize that at some point in the future, inevitably, a generation must rise seeking to do the right thing, and it would require this account of how we got to wherever we get to if we fail to turn around. So just so that you would have clarity as to purpose, this is why I'm explaining this part. So I am actually bearing witness to a generation who might be perhaps, unfortunately, maybe not even born yet. Or it might be a generation that is already here but is waiting to be called out. I don't know. But I have to do this, and I'm speaking from a place of conviction. No partisanship, no ethno-religious prejudices. I am speaking to what I am saying. Let those who have ears, let them incline their ears. When you're looking to kill a state, and I use the state deliberately and not a nation, because Nigeria is not a nation, it's a conglomeration of captured peoples and nations. It is not a nation. A nation speaks to shared aspirations and is not necessarily found only on ethno-religious homogeneity. It's about understanding our shared humanity and agreeing to live by accepted rules under the rule of law. That is what makes a nation. Nigeria is also not a country. It is essentially a state that exists simply to replicate, sustain itself. Whether that be at the expense of its victims or not, it doesn't matter to Nigeria. Much more temperate persons and wiser heads than myself, somebody like Obafemi Awolowo, described it as a mere geographical expression. And he was completely correct. And he still is correct within the context of our inability to evolve a nation from the disparate patchwork of nations and victims, humanities that have been trapped in the space the British labeled Nigeria. When you want to kill such a state, you divide the people in every possible way. Yeah, that's the first thing you do. You divide them. You do not allow them to have a sense of shared aspirations. You divide them on the grounds of ethnicity. You divide them on the grounds of religion. You divide them on the ground of sex. Let me show you. It's already bad enough that ethnic divisions are encouraged in Nigeria, even by the fraud of 1999, because it talks about federal character, it talks about quota system, it talks about catchment area. Some people are from educationally disadvantaged states. So by policy, Nigeria already divides its people by constitutional and lawful policies. There is no attempt made at getting the synergy that could have been battered from our diversities. What has happened is that the system has deliberately divided us. Now, it's bad enough that that happens at the level of ethnicity, but let me now show you how it happens even at the level of religion. I have often been heard to say that Nigeria has an Igbo problem. And that is because institutionally, the Nigerian state discriminates against Ndi Igbo. Yeah, but Ndi Igbo discriminates against Ndi Igbo. I'll show you. If the priest is from Anambra, he can't be bishop in Imo or vice versa. And even within a state, there is discrimination as to who qualifies for what, because there are systemic divisions of the people. In Oyo State, it has become normal that it is only Ibadan persons that can be governor in a Yoruba state. The person from Okeogun is systematically excluded unless if at some point by some shenanigan or the other, such as the one that battered Alao Akala. Other than that, it's almost impossible for a person of Yoruba origin from the same state to emerge, because we've managed to divide ourselves along lines. We keep breaking ourselves into multiple cells, and we've not managed to find common aspirations. So it's about, is our man, is that person, is this person. I have been heard to say, and I stand by it, there are more Liverpool football supporters in Nigeria than Nigerians. There are more Arsenal supporters in Nigeria than Nigerians. You have more Catholics in Nigeria than Nigerians. There are by far more Shia in Nigeria than Nigerians. You have more Muslims in Nigeria than Nigerians. You have more Christians in Nigeria than Nigerians. We are consistently divided systematically and deliberately, and we've never managed to evolve a Nigerian identity because we don't have a sense of shared destinies. And we aspire to completely different things. This is deliberate. The system divides us. That is how you kill a state. That is merely one. The next thing you do to kill a state is that you allow impunity to reign. You develop an efficient system for the administration of impunity. I have spoken extensively to the feudalization of Nigeria. This comes across as some sort of abstract concept when I speak to it. But what we all seem to forget is that in looking to kill a state, you must destroy the rule of law and institute impunity so that you don't have an even scale for justice. Some people must be institutionally above the law. The system must recognize their rights to impunity once they are on the right side of power, which is unmoored or unyoked to law and is therefore unaccountable. they can do no wrong. And that is why, if the Nance president is to be believed, he was told that he will be killed and nothing will happen. Do you get it? You have a system that deals, it's become so horrible that the system has perfected the capacity to administer impunity. You promote injustice and you expect peace. You expect those who know that they are institutionally discriminated against, you actually expect them to comply with the laws that they are aware does not bind the next man. Impunity reigns and injustice is promoted. The first condition of the human spirit is justice. It demands it constantly. And in the absence of justice, what you're seeking to do, if it's not feudalism, is certainly an apartheid system that has multiple layers of citizenship or membership. Because to talk of citizenship speaks to the equality of persons before the law. But the one thing that has happened in Nigeria is that nobody is equal before the law. You can speak to the evil done by a member of the ruling class and find yourself locked up in prison. And you can be a terrorist, a self-confessed one, demanding terms and dictating terms for the surrender of your victim, such as we have seen multiple times on the plateau and in the Middle Belt, where persons speaking in terms of farmer elders clash, when it is clear that these are acts of genocide, have had the coyones to come into the public space and be dictating terms of peace. This is the promotion of injustice, and you cannot have peace in such an environment. You may lord it over people for a season on account of superior firepower, but this feeling of marginalization and injustice will definitely feed a fight back. It might take a generation, it might take two, it might take three. But you cannot sustain injustice indefinitely. And this drive will continue. The law enforcers are rendered complicit and criminal when a state is to be killed. Because when the law enforcer is the one that is working in pursuit of illegitimate purpose, acting outside the powers given by law, it then means that the law enforcer is criminal. EFCC officers engaged in debt recovery, EFCC threatening people for political reasons, becoming impotent once the person belongs to the ruling class. That is criminality of those who should be enforcing the law. This is how you kill a state. You elect all the crooked politicians you can find. I'll remind you, it's on national TV. It's not Dele Farotimi talking. It is Adam Oshio Ole. How do you pronounce that? Okay, Oshio Mole. Oshio Baba. He said, join the APC and your sins are forgiven. Let me put it in the proper context. Join the APC and all your crimes are licensed, whether past or in the future. Because who is it to speak in terms of sins? A state does not speak to sin. You're not his father confessor. He's not your congregant. The state speaks to crime. And then you're hearing the state dictating, having its policy dictated by the chairman of a political party, he came to the public space and said, join the APC and you can be as criminal as you care. And this has been the reality that we have seen. Everybody that has joined the APC who had one criminal allegation or the other around their neck, have had those criminal allegations disappeared. There are plethora of criminals, and you need not look too far when you look at the upper echelon of our government, whether that be at the executive level or at the legislative level, whether that be at the federal level, the state, or the local government. What you see everywhere you look is a reign of criminals. Some people even have criminal records, and our courts have ignored this. In all cases where it has been raised, there has been one explanation or the other found by the courts. These are the ways you kill a state. Oh, and by the way, in doing this, I had help. I went to Quora and I asked Quora, how do you destroy a state? And he listed some of these, and I added what I have left on the foundation of what I know of my country. This is how you kill a state. You subjectivize the truth when you want to kill a state. What is true in relation to A becomes explainable when it is in relation to B. So if he's a member of your tribe or your religious order or your political party, he can't do no wrong. That evil is done can be explained. It's because you don't like him that you are shouting. After all, Lagbaja else did the same thing. Temedu actually did that other one. So it is all right when it is done against the persons you don't like, but it is wrong when it is done to those you love. You subjectifies the truth. The truth is no longer true depending on who is involved. A society built on such foundations of hypocrisy and double standard is not one that can be sustained. That is how you kill a state. You subjectifies the truth. You sit down sometime and you are listening to some press men, especially that dishonest bunch that they have on that their horrible channel they call TVC. Occasionally, I'm forced to I come across them, especially that Toad. That one will be talking, very intelligent guy, but he's been perverted because of filthy lucre. He will be talking at variance with the facts that he knows, and he'll be talking from both sides of his mouth. That is how you kill a state. And these are the persons shaping public opinions. They are the ones telling the public, oh, this is what A has done. They are the ones interpreting what is true and what is false. And they are lying out of their teeth. And you realize very quickly that this is how you weaponize ignorance, because when those who are shaping public opinion are busy lying through their teeth, deliberately twisting the facts, interpreting and subjectivizing truth through the prism of their political preferences, what you find at the end of the day is that society is destroyed. When you place the interest of a few above that of the collective, when you feudalize the state, like Nigeria has been feudalized, when the bulk of governance expenditure goes directly in the direction of maintaining the people in power, when people can see the kind of primary school structures we have across the country and yet have little hesitation in voting to buy yachts, in voting to build luxury houses, in voting to upgrade already upgraded houses up and down the place. When the interest of the Commonwealth is discounted in pursuance of personal interest and comfort. That is how you kill a state. Nigeria is being destroyed deliberately. But the worst of the offenses against any state and the victims or citizens of such a state, as is the one being done to Nigeria today, is when you evaporate hope and you render the people desperate. Hope is the basis from which human beings find the capacity to overcome adversity, to get up and give it another go, in the belief that tomorrow will be better than today. However bad the kick they got yesterday might be, they get up in the hope that today will definitely be better than tomorrow. So they invest their hope. They invest their hope in change. In 1993, the Nigerian people, across the length and breadth of Nigeria, across the ethnic divide, across the religious divide, it was the first time we had a Muslim ticket. We invested hope in Hope 93. We voted Abiola. Abiola won the election. Hope was dashed. The military refused to go. I've spoken enough to this subject on many occasions. So I'm not going to waste my time talking to you about how we invested hope in change in 1993. They destroyed it. We were sold a dud in 1999. Obasanjo came. We were hoping for a better outcome. They destroyed it again. In 2023, we started hoping. Hope was preserving us even in the face of the tribulations we faced in the Buhari years. We hoped. Yakubu, Yahoo, or Vinek gave us hope. He spoke about beavers, IREV. We went and registered. We mobilized people. We rekindled the hopes that were destroyed and shot to death in 2020 October. We rekindled the hope. We invested our hopes, our aspiration in change that will come through the polls in 2023. The hope was again evaporated. All thanks to Mahmoud Yahoo. All thanks to our judiciary. Hope was evaporated again. And then renewed hope, renewed shege was forced on us. Hope was dashed. People have been rendered desperate and hopeless. In the midst of all of this, all the voices that used to serve as lighthouses. For those of you who may not understand the analogy of the lighthouse, let me explain it to you. Back in the days when there were no GPS, maritime nations would build lighthouses in the water, almost always on some rocky shore. Out in the waters, they would build it there and set up a light that wouldn't go out. I remember my reading of history that the port of Alexandria back then had one. Over the years, they will build all these lighthouses so that when ships are coming to shore, they are able to navigate their ways through the rocks that might be, the reefs that might be exposed in low tide and all of that. So lighthouses serve as beacons by which you navigate your way to shore. Every country, every society requires them. Sometimes they are religious, sometimes they are political, sometimes they're just persons in society who act as consciences of society. Unfortunately for the Nigerian, in this season, where a decision has been taken to kill the Nigerian state, either deliberately or inadvertently, the fathers of faith, all your pastors and daddy GOs, they are ominously silent at a time when they should be talking. All your imams and sheikhs, they've lost their voices. Those who once called Nigeria to order, who are saving Nigeria, those who acted as consciences of the nation, quote and unquote, are falling silent at a time of grave national emergencies. Murders are happening on the plateau. Genocides are being carried out in the Benue Trough. The forests of the southwest are teeming with Fulani terrorists. But voices that once spoke are silent. Society is faced with normative collapse. Everything that once held it up, propped it up, the standards by which we once lived, or at least aspired or pretended, they've been completely compromised. This is how you kill a state. The governor of a state whose citizens are victims of genocide, who knows that his citizens were deliberately disarmed by security forces years before these attacks became a pattern, is more interested in autopsy for cows rather than in the lives or even identity of the persons who are being murdered in his territory. Another one was issuing visa ban. This is how you kill a state. When you weaponize religion, where religion is used to explain the discountenance of humanity, and the state is blind to this, this is how you kill a state. This is how you kill a state. When you compromise the territorial integrity of a state on the back of political expediency, that is how you kill a state. When the judicial system of a state is no longer the last hope of the common man, when he has to look outside the system for his salvation, you are promoting anarchy. And that is how you kill a state. That is how you kill a state. Jackson was on his farm, attacked by a Fulani terrorist on his own farm. His own farm, his ancestral land, attacked and stabbed multiple times, and he managed to wrestle the knife from the person attacking him, and he proceeded to stab the person in self-defense. And our Supreme Court convicted him of murder. If the governor of that state finds the grace to sanction that sentence and does not move with automatic alacrity to pardon that man, he is complicit in the judicial murder that guy is being prepped for. Just the same way that Ken Saro-Wiwa was murdered judicially, using the instrumentation of law and the court or the judicial system. That is exactly what is being designed for Jackson. And that is how you kill a state. When defenseless citizens who are killed in their bed are now the ones who are being prosecuted for defending themselves and then being sentenced to death by the court system that is supposed to be the last resort of the common man, you're killing the state. You're killing the state. Nigeria has been erected in the primitive image of its founders because the British started from a feudal origin. Like every modern society, before it was modernized by the institution of the rule of law. So it was found in that putrid image where you deal only with the rulers and everybody under them be damned. And that is what has brought us to where we are. It has become a feudal state today where the interest of the people is of no consequence to the rulers. Of what interest is the diarrhea of the baboon to the monkey? Our rulers are not touched by the pains of our affliction because they are separated from us. They're not touched. They don't know us. That's why they vote fat salaries. That's why once they get into the House of Reps or Senate, no matter what party they went with, they become one. That is why they can cross carpet from one party to the other. You see governors of state with their cabinet, everybody else moving into another party because it was never about the interest of the people. You have a system that is unyoked to the rule of law, where people just do as they care because they are licensed to break the law because of their membership, either of an ethnic nation or of a political party or a religious order. We've been broken into many pieces because we need to be part of pieces that have access to the levels of impunity. So I may be the member of a church or the member of an ethnicity. Then when one of my own is occupying power at a level, I can access that power without any recourse to law. That is how you kill a state. I sat down and I asked myself, because when you find things like these, you must come to the point where you must also ask yourself, why? Why are they killing the Nigerian state? It's an imperfect place, yes, but it can be fixed by us. If we had had rulers who cared anything about us, we could very easily have become better than we are. It is not beyond our capacity as human beings to imagine a better tomorrow and then to walk towards that better tomorrow. But unfortunately, we have had people who have no image of tomorrow, who have no capacity to envision, who are yoked to their carnality. Those are the ones who have ruined our country whilst pretending to rule it. So, what has happened is that when power, let me take you back a little. Lord Acton, it was. He said, power corrupts. He then went for that. He said, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I've lectured on the subject, and I know that I've told you so many times. I said that you could actually stop the entire quotation at power corrupts because the purpose of power is to corrupt. The minute power is not yoked to the limitations of law, it must corrupt. It is simply in the nature of the human being. The mind of man is desperately wicked. So if you give power that is unyoked to law, the mind of man will devise ever more devious ways to use that power, once it does not have to account for the use of the power. So what you find is that once the judiciary is yoked to perversion and is reflecting the mind of sick people who are not yoked to vision or purpose, you find that the judiciary is going to be doing all kind of madness. Imagine a judiciary that has its judgment dictated by the wills of people like Wiki. Just imagine, I'm not saying that's what it is, but just imagine, let's assume that it is Wiki that is indeed telling the judiciary what to do. The same weekend, I'll say one thing in the evening, do another by the morning. Imagine that any human being is allowed to do as he pleases outside the dictate of the law. No matter how intelligent the man is bound to misbehave. In the old Roman Empire, the more powerful a ruler is, the more likely he would have a man behind him. You know what he's saying to him? Memento mori. Memento mori says, remember you will die. Means you remember you are human. This is to remind the person wielding the law, the power, that he is merely human and he should focus on the days when he will no longer be in power or even alive. So because of these, men are moored to norms. But look at our country. Men have wielded power for years without being yoked to purpose. And I'm not just talking about presidents. I'm talking about governors. I'm talking about senators. I'm talking about House of Reps members. I'm talking about civil servants. I'm talking about soldiers. I'm talking about policemen. I'm talking about company executives, banks, bankers. You think it's by accident that Nigerian banks declare fantastic profit in an economy that nobody is lending? They are largely money launderers. That's why they are busy clawing money from me and you. All the money that politicians are stealing, who do you think is laundering it? Where do you think they are keeping it? They said they found 80 point something billion in somebody's account the other day. How did he get there? Is he the only one who has that kind of deposit in his account? How come no banker has been prosecuted or convicted? No banker for in all the corruption cases over the years. No notable banker, not one. Is it that they are angels? What you have is a situation where, because they have gone mad over the years, they are actually afraid of change. Because if change comes and somebody is looking at what they have done, a lot of people that you clap for today, they will end up in prison. Let me remind you, Commodore Lawumi, in his interview, said that let us just wait until 2023. There are a lot of people will be shocked by the revelations that will be coming out of the DSS. That was because they all assumed, any rational person looking at our situation and the trajectory knew that the APC could not retain power in 2023. So the hope was that in 2023, a new government will come into place that will be interested in saving Nigeria. That was Olawumi's thought. That was his thinking when he was talking in 2022. He was talking about how we will be surprised. But of course, we were not surprised. You have a government that is continuing the policies of Muhammadu Buhari. But what are these policies? The destruction of Nigeria. Our rulers have concluded that to get away with the crimes that they have committed against us, against the Nigerian state, they have to destroy Nigeria. If they don't destroy Nigeria and ruin the existing legal order, they would have to pay for their crime at some point. That is why they are doing all they have done. I've broken it down for you, and I've given you the step-by-step blow of how to kill a state. That is what they have done to Nigeria. The destruction of Nigeria is deliberate. It is not by accident. Nobody is as stupid as these people are claiming to be. Even they must be aware of the consequences of what they have done to the Nigerian state and to the Nigerian people. And my own conclusion is that they have decided to kill this country because it is the only way they can get away with their crime. I've swung by this morning, not to lament, and it's not a self-flagellation exercise. It is essentially to educate you. Amza, I see you online, my brother from Ghana, and I thank you. I got your gift for my birthday. Thank you. So here is the point I'm making to you. I'm giving you this knowledge to equip you. The generation that will come and read or hear the things I am saying, they will read and hear of the things I'm saying to you, and then they will do with it what they will. You need to act on these things because I'm saying it in your time. If these things are not to become testimonies against you, you must act to alter the trajectory of Nigeria. Because in its destruction lies multiple civil wars. In its destruction lies the destruction of peace for generations, at least until justice is served. We can still save this country, not necessarily in the way it is, because if you can't save it the way it is, you have to reimagine it. And the first step to that, if we must do it peacefully, if they would allow it to be done peacefully, has to be through the electoral process. I know they will not give it up easily. As I've shown you, they've destroyed hopes in the past. They destroyed it in 1993. They destroyed it in 2023. But without hope, we're lost. And we must kindle that hope. But I do not build hope on illusions, and I'm not calling you to an illusion. We did put the draft bill in the public space at the beginning of last month. We're going to take it off the public space by the end of this week so that we distill a bill to be presented to the National Assembly. It's not an assembly that I consider an assembly of the people, but sometime, in order to fight a just war, and make no mistake about it, we may need to fight a just war. It's just one that we will not be fighting with guns. We'll fight it using our brains. It's not beyond us. We are more than them, and we must fight for our freedom. Download the imperatives of the Nigerian Revolution. There's an entire section written by Taiwo Akinlami, my dear brother, that speaks to non-violent revolution. It's a manual. It speaks to sit at home. It speaks to the moral majority. We must build that moral majority. We must be deliberate about building it, and we must educate ourselves. We must look beyond ethnicity. We must look beyond religion. And this is certainly nothing to do with partisanship. Partisanship is something that citizens can afford. It's a luxury you give to citizens. It is not something that can be afforded by victims. If you as a victim, you're still thinking in terms of APC, PDP, Labour, or any of the many divisions, it means that you have not recognized the fact of your victimhood. There can only be one side because they have only one side. The ease of movement by which they cross from one party to the other and recognize their common interest should tell you that they are only one. We are the ones who are divided, and we need to stop that division forthwith. We must recognize what is in our own common interest, and we must pursue those. You must begin to look beyond partisanship. There is nothing I want for me that I don't want for everyone else. I want everyone else, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their religion, regardless of their party affiliations, ideology. I don't care. It's your business. I want one standard for all. And you should want that very well yourself, because at the end of the day, of what use are the rights you want for yourself that you want denied to others? We'll be sending that bill for the National Assembly. And do not do so naively. Now, but you place something on top of the next. And in the absence of guns, you must learn to weaponize your brains. bade you farewell for this week. I have enumerated for you how they are killing Nigeria, but I've also reminded you that it is in your hand to say when enough truly becomes enough. Hmm? Have you blessed weeks ahead. God bless you.